All right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan.
What's going on?
What's going on?
Actually, I should address something
Okay,
first.
what do you have for us? Go ahead.
I was in a Slate meeting yesterday, like literally a 10-minute, little stop and chat with somebody in Ottawa, and I came out, and I'm not like 57 texts were in the group text.
Oh, that's just it, Noodles. That's just it. I'm coming up with a new podcast with JP and Luke, and we've just got to get some different guests.
Well, don't forget Joe from the Bridge. Your biggest
he'll be covering the Leafs.
Yes.
He'll be covering the Leafs for our new podcast.
Am I not
because
allowed
these
on it?
donkeys have just tried to make up rules. Nobody knows the rules. Doogie is clearly out to lunch with the rules. And now we've got a riveting 1-1 scorecard after one weekend.
I think we're burying the lead, how pathetic our picks were this weekend.
Yes.
Like, it was pathetic between collectively the four of us and both teams. Like, we hit on a couple of totals. That's it. And there was mass confusion on that because – Doogie is in the business of communication, and I don't think communication was applied here when it came to how the rules were actually going to play out in terms of the
Hayes,
scoring
just
system.
think about this. Think about this and how pathetic it was. Our great NFL former player was begging and clinging to life for that one little niblet point. He was like, we got one. We got one.
I know.
And I'm like, this is how bad it is when our guy is saying, we got one.
Luke Wilson has a Super Bowl ring in his house, and he's texting demanding that you get a point for a total, or he's going to quit the show.
It was insane.
Insanity.
That group chat was insanity. And, of course, I just tried to light a little fire. I'm like, what is going on, gentlemen? And then both sides are like, these guys are idiots. These guys are idiots. Like, it was unbelievable. My phone, you know what? Like I say, sometimes you literally just put it down and then you pick it up and you're like, I can't believe I've got 84 messages. It was 80, it
was
got
ruthless.
up to 80 messages.
We were all
ridiculous.
sitting on, it was a live chat. Like, we were all staring at our phones waiting for the next guy to come over the top, and then you went over the top, and then Al's brother was in there weaseling around off the cruise. And it does bring up an interesting question because I ran into this a couple of weeks ago where I was on a chat with, I think, my wife and I want to say my brother-in-law, and I was driving at the time, and I was included in it, and the two of them had been texting 45 times, and I got to the end of it, and I said, guys, I'm not going back. Like, I'm not going to go back and read what's happening. I'm just going to give you a thumbs up. Or I texted him separately or saw him, I think, over Christmas and said, just for the record, I have no idea what you were texting because I missed the whole thing. Right. And once you get too deep into it, I'm not going back to find out how this thing started. You know what I mean? Like, you turn your phone off or jump on a flight and you get off and you miss 85 texts from a group. You're not going back to figure out what happened. You're out. You just got to accept that you missed it.
Leave the conversation before I go back.
You're famous for leaving the conversation, too. Doogie, I was texting. We had a chat because we have a million different chats going, right? Yeah. Like when we're all on, when Noodles, when you're on the road and someone else comes in, Jonas, Feschuk, then there's an Al's brother, then there's one with JP, there's one with Joe from the Bridge. And I had been texting into the abyss about something for a while. And finally, I asked Doogie, I go, what do you think O was, like, where's O at with this? And he goes, oh, he left the chat like weeks ago. I didn't even know you were gone. I had been texting, again, into the abyss. So like, maybe we should think of this. Maybe we should do that. And Doogie's like, oh, he's gone, man. He left a long time ago.
Well, the most recent one I left is because Joe from the Bridge, if we're going to air out laundry, he wants to know our location at 9:45 in the morning. And I just said, nope. No way.
Yeah.
I have to rid myself of that information. So
that's reasonable. That is a reasonable excuse to leave.
You can contact me individually approximately 3 p.m., not at 9:40. That one at 9:45 coming in hot. I'm just like, there is no need for this one right now. I can't do it.
Yeah. No, you're right. We're all on it, and we all know what's happening there.
We're just outing each other right now.
We really are.
4:04 on a Monday.
Hey, it's one of those days, man.
I got to say, back to the football picks, I warned you about your boy out in L.A., man, with the Chargers.
Justin Herbert. Yeah, Justin Herbert.
That's gay, and I'm worried about your boy Jordan Love as well.
So am I. He was horrendous.
Here's the thing with him.
Horrendous.
Okay? He has that performance against the Eagles. How many more are you going to give him before? Like, how many years are you going to watch him to say, can this guy do it? Like, do you give him one more year to say, can you?
Here's the problem, though. They've already paid him.
No kidding.
That's what hurt. That's what's so scarring here is he held out of camp and said, I'm not showing up until you pay me. And they said, fine, we'll pay you. And they're paying him $55 million for the next 3 years. He's one of the 3 or 4 highest paid quarterbacks in the game. Justin Herbert's right there with him. So he had them over a barrel, and they buckled, and they said, fine, we're going to pay you. And listen, he had a really good second half last year, great playoff game in Dallas, really good 3 quarters in San Francisco last year. This year was a step back, period, end of story for Jordan Love. Now, he did have a lot of injuries, including opening night in Brazil when they played Philly on that Friday night. He seemingly was hurt all year. Their wide receivers were a mess for the most part all season, including yesterday. I think you got to equate for some injuries, equate for a lack of help in terms of the wide receivers. But this guy cannot throw accurate balls down the field. That's the issue. Jordan Love, he can dink and doink all night. You want something out of the flat? I can give that to you. Josh Jacobs run a wheel route, I'll hit you. Anything down the field, this guy is basically Rex Grossman right now.
Okay,
like
but
it's a mess.
Hayes, part of the question is, Hayes, this is like Danny Dimes plus, where it's like, when are you going to get to the point where you're like, we really like this guy, but he's not going to get us over the hump?
Well, I'm going to give it another year. I'm going to give it another year. Wow. I'm going to allow them to try to get a true number 1 wide receiver. I'm going to give him a year, hopefully, of health. And then beyond that, if he can't do it next year, like take a step. I'm not saying win a Super Bowl. They're still a really young team. They might be the youngest team in the league, Green Bay. Like they're one of the youngest teams. But I'll give it another year where he needs to take a step forward. If he doesn't, check in with me this time next season. I'll have a different answer for you.
What are they going to do, though, Brian? Like he is a good young quarterback. They moved Rodgers. Could you imagine if they decided to keep Rodgers through all of this? Like there's a progression there with Green Bay. I think you should give it more than a year. Yes, because he's still young, and let's see if this team turns the corner and he can do it. What sucks for a lot of these players, you're judged on one game.
Yes,
that's it.
That's
one
it,
game.
Man.
You
one
have
and done.
Look at these Washington Commanders. I mean, that was a great game last night.
Finally, we got a good game. The 5th and final game of the weekend. The other games were blowouts and really some ugly, bad football. And, we got another one tonight, Rams-Vikings, and Hazenbro on the clock. Al's brother and I have no idea what we're doing. We'll find a way to pick something tonight. We'll try to pick a total and go up 2-1 going into next week. That's our hope. Riveting stuff. We can be 2-1 going into next weekend. But what I took out of the weekend, and we'll get into it with Luke in an hour, is Detroit, Kansas City are cackling right now. Absolutely cackling. And for me, it's Detroit, Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, Philly. Like, those are your 5 teams that can win. And I'm not as bullish on Philly anymore because I thought Jalen Hurts really struggled. I didn't think he looked great. It feels like there's 3 AFC teams and the Lions. That's kind of what it feels like. I think Detroit is going to go to a Super Bowl, and we'll see who they end up playing. Philly, maybe if he gets in rhythm, Hurts did miss the previous 2 games. Maybe they can win without him being spectacular. We'll see. But it's a
Hurts
short list.
Hurts is the X factor, man, because he can either turn it around and get hot and turn into the guy that took him to the last Super Bowl, or they fizzle out.
That's it. And maybe it's as simple as, hey, you look at who they're going to play. They're going to play the winner of the game tonight. Maybe just don't turn the ball over and you can still get to an NFC Championship game. Then you go to Detroit and Saquon Barkley has a remarkable night. Maybe you punch a ticket. He's got to be better than he was yesterday for them to win a Super Bowl. Can they Can they win another game or 2 with him playing like that? Probably, or possibly. Can they win a Super Bowl? I don't believe that. So he's got to prove he can be better. So there's a lot on the NFL we'll get to today. Coaching carousel continues. You get Steph Curry in town tonight. We'll get to that. And the Leafs are playing Dallas tomorrow. Matt Duchene, who's leading the Stars in points, is going to join us in the 6 p.m. hour. Good Halliburton boy, Matt Duchene. So we'll catch up with Matt Duchene later as the Leafs prepare for a game tomorrow night. And you see Steven Lorentz practicing with Matthews and Marner today down at practice. I have no idea what the thought process on that. Listen, Lorentz he's been good for them. Good for him. He's had a good start. He loves the Leafs.
But let me ask you,
what are they thinking is going to happen here?
What's going to
happen here? Yes, Nyes was practicing with Tavares and Nylander. So I don't, unless he was just stepping in for Pacioretty or they wanted to get a look at practice. I don't know. But what are we doing here if that's the answer after 2 really poor games? They did not play well on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, so you're saying that Bobby McMahon, Pacioretty, and Nyes were on the ice, but it was Lorenz on the top line. Okay.
Yes, Steven Lorenz with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner.
I understand. Listen, sometimes you just mess with people on an off day, like, you're given different looks, all of that type of stuff. But Matthew Nyes has been a great fit for that top line, and he's played well. You're allowed a game here or there. I agree. I thought Saturday night, we didn't get to chat. I thought Saturday night was a trap game for the Leafs because you're reading, Vancouver's stuck in Carolina. They're going to, they're getting in late at 2:00. And I thought right away, I'm like, half those guys, and we've all done it, including you, Hayes and Junior, you travel on a game day. You do all of these things. Like, they landed and played hockey, and that's what they did. And the Leafs didn't have much jump or energy, and there wasn't a lot of space. I know, but Noodles,
that almost makes it a reverse trap game, where it's like if you don't think that under Rick Tocchet that they're going to land and jump out of the gate and play a solid game, I'll tell you my one takeaway from that game before I get into the Leafs lines is that Quinn Hughes. Like,
he is so good, man.
Good player, man.
You bring it up all the time, Hayes. Like, if that guy played in the East and had a lot more attention, like if that guy was a New York Ranger or a Munch, he's just unbelievable. Like
he could be a top 5 player in the league right now.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
Like he's top 10 for sure, and I know we do the TSN top 50, and I don't know where he landed. He had to be in the top 10, and he won the Norris last year. It's not like this guy came out of nowhere. He's phenomenal. Yeah. But it's like McDavid, McKinnon, McCarr, Hughes, Hellebuck. Like is that
Kucherov, guys like that?
Yeah, Kucherov, right. Draisaitl's been phenomenal. Matthews, but like he's in the top 7 or 8, undisputed.
Like
he
as soon
phenomenal.
As he took it to the next level and became like ultra competitive, and you just see the purpose he plays with, and he's determined and skillful, and it's like before he was just a young kid back there who could make some plays and dangle and skate, but now it's like his purposeful shifts are like every time he's out there, man. It's incredible.
It's terrifying for the opponents.
And if you're a young kid like that Hudson in Montreal, I would just be watching that guy like a hawk. Like, how does he get his business done? How does he move throughout the ice? He's an awesome player. He's literally one of the guys where it's like, I want to pay to watch that guy.
He's a ticket seller, man.
Oh,
he is.
God.
He's in town. You got to see him play.
And he's not physically a monster. You're right. Lane Hudson literally has to watch game tape of him, of how he handles his body. Because defensively, I thought he was pretty good, too, winning loose puck battles and getting in the lane. You're not running anybody over. What you are doing is just being smart. And I thought, Hughes is a top-tier player. I thought Pettersson defensively was unreal.
He played very well defensively.
I thought he played with a lot of jam the other night, which was weird because I hadn't, laid eyes on that live in a while. I watched Vancouver a few times, obviously this year, more than that. But Pettersson had some determination to his game the other night. Maybe there's just all that noise around them. It's like, hey, we just got to come out and have a game. They did because they laid an egg the night before and Carolina lost 2-0. So it was kind of like, hey, late flight, all of these types of things. It all fell into place, and their goalie made a couple good saves when he had to, too. That Lankinen found money for them.
He's been very good. His last 2 starts, he's been really, really good.
Yeah.
He's been good all year. No, for sure. And listen, credit to Vancouver because it was a tough spot for them. Yes, tough. You've done it before in junior or in college or whatever, but you're not used to that in the National Hockey League.
No, you're right.
Where you wake up in Carolina, you got to wait for the plane to be de-iced, you fly in, and it's a big stage. It's hockey night in Toronto. I mean, it's a big, big game. It's one that all these guys would have circled. And listen, they scored on the first shift in the first period and the third period. That was the game, effectively. They score immediately. They set a tone immediately. And the Leafs they never showed any life. Like, they never had – and that's really what you needed if you're the Maple Leafs on Saturday night. That's what's got to be so disappointing from Berube's standpoint is really all you needed was life, some physicality and try to push them out of the play. And the Leafs just never, ever looked like they had it, and they never looked like they were going to find it. Like that, once Sherwood scored, I think the game was over anyway, but when Sherwood scored to start the third, it's like, turn the lights out. Like they're not here. They don't have it tonight. It's not going to happen.
I think there's one thing. Like I never believe in like excuses, but one thing I'll say about them with the schedule the way it is this year, I think they're just tired. Like I think they're at a point where they played a lot of hockey, and it's just kind of the dog days, and they're kind of out of it. And if I was coaching the team, I would be going with the John Cooper philosophy right now, which is there wouldn't be a lot of guys at the rink on off days, period, at all, because haven't they been playing a crap load of hockey?
They played a lot of hockey and a lot of back-to-backs.
A lot of back-to-backs, and I think they're just out of gas. And sometimes when you're out of gas, you're mentally not there, and you have those sleepy nights where you're like, I'm not with it.
Here's the scary part, guys. I looked at this. Like, every team that is chasing Toronto has gone out west and done all their trips and all of that. Leafs have 3 trips out west after February. Their schedule gets tougher because as much as you said lots of back-to-backs and stuff, they've also had a lot of games where the team has played the night before in Montreal or in Ottawa or whatever. They've had some favorable matchups too. If you look at strength of schedule, there is some. I was looking at it the other day because
they go through Western Canada, they go through California still. They haven't been in Colorado, Vegas. They haven't been to any of those spots.
They haven't been anywhere out west as far as. And I was looking at it. They've got a tough schedule where they go into, we'll call it Denver, and then it's back here for a game, and then it's back out to Calgary. They've got some travel and some adversity ahead of them from a scheduling standpoint, not from anything else, but from a scheduling standpoint. They've still got some stuff ahead of them, but it's not until after the break. It's not until after, like we're talking, I think it's early March whenever they come back.
Well, that's just it. Try to be re-energized, try to be refreshed, and try to play some solid hockey leading up to the break. Get your break, and then it's literally probably from what you're saying, going out west 3 times after the break is going to be bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I read that
I think
correctly.
they go to Western Canada before the break. I thought they end like they do the Seattle, Western Canada, and then into the Four Nations.
You know what? You're right. Sorry. It is Kraken February 6th. So you're right. Kraken and then Maple Leafs at Canucks.
Yeah.
So it's, sorry, I misspoke
and
on
that's
that.
right before the break.
You're right. That is just before the break. That is
But
February 4th to 8th.
Yeah, but they go out to California late, like end of March. They're out there.
Yeah.
And they come home, like down the stretch, with a lot of road games. Like
do you remember that
they
one
do not
time
play a lot of home games in March and early April.
Do you remember one time they went out there? It was during the, I think, Kessel, Dion years, and San Jose was stacked, L.A. was stacked, Anaheim was stacked, and St. Louis was stacked. And you and I had just some kind of wager on how many points they were going to get, and I said 0. They're getting 0 points. And you were like, it's not possible. And they went out there and they got 0 points.
Wasn't there an injury? Didn't Bernier get hurt? And that's what
I don't know what they got spanked.
And Reimer had to come in like Anaheim or something, and then they stopped in Detroit on the way home, and that was the okay.
I think you're right. That was the end of that was the 18-wheeler. I think that might have been that season or the next season where they were way up, like 9 points in with 15 to go, and they missed by 9 points.
Yeah, something ridiculous,
something crazy like that. And that does put into perspective like where the Leafs are. I think you might be onto something, that like they've played a lot of games. It's the dog days. It's not an excuse for poor games.
It's a reality,
but it is a reality. Again, I look at Wall not playing. Like they have clearly committed to the idea that this guy needs rest, and take that for whatever it's worth. But that's probably just how he's going to be defined now for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
Right? He's a rest guy because. Personally, I would look at that like if you're a one, like a true one, you're a dog. Like I need in the net. If he played the way he played in Carolina, then off day, then Saturday night, then not again until Tuesday. Hellebuck's playing that game. Vasilevsky's playing that game. Bob's playing it. Walt not playing.
But the question that comes on top of that is, well, what the hell happens in playoffs where you got to be a dog no matter what?
It's a great question. Because
it's every other day for 2 months. Can you do that?
I don't know if he can. Because
that's what's required if you want to do something special.
Absolutely. And that's listen, it's one thing to skip a start in January, not the end of the world. They didn't score. Even if he played, they weren't going to win that game. But it is a scenario where the guy's 26 coming off a poor start. You say it all the time, Noodles. Hellebuck's always like, I'm going to forget about that and play me.
Yeah.
And they get to Saturday night, and it's like, nah, he's a little tired, and we want to put Dennis in. It's like, okay. Then they're defining who he is. They're saying this guy is not capable of being a true number one because he's just not going to play enough. They're not going to put him in that situation to play. And he's it's a microcosm of the whole team, maybe. Right now, they're all a little
Jamie,
bit hurt
would they
and
be
tired,
deciding
and that's
that
just the way it's
for
going to
him?
go.
Would they be deciding that for him, or would he say probably not the best idea to?
I think there is conversations, but you are looking at their schedule and saying, okay, Vancouver, then into Dallas, then what is it, Devils?
Yeah,
and then
all
it's
home
Canadians.
games, though.
Yeah, you're right. Like there is
no back-to-backs.
Days in between.
Yeah, like it's. I don't know. I mean, again, that's not why they lost. It has nothing to even do with the outcome. It just, I wasn't surprised they didn't play him. And the explanation was, he's played a lot. He's a little bit tired. Okay. Then that's, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is.
What happens
man.
when he gets a little bit older? Is it good? Like, I don't know if that's going to get better or worse. Like, isn't he in the prime fit years of his life where he should
that's
be
what
like,
I'm saying. Like,
play me every damn night?
I guess that is, and maybe that's a Disney, Gordon Bombay, Mighty Ducks bogus mentality. But there's a part of me that wanted to believe that Wall would storm in and say, I'm playing. Like, I'm playing tonight. I didn't like my game the other night. We don't play until Tuesday. I'm not letting Dennis Hildeby go out there after that. Put me in.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. Doesn't happen.
It is just I don't know what the schedule is. I don't know what their thought process is, but it could have easily been, hey, you're playing Thursday, you're playing Saturday, you get Sunday off, and you're playing Tuesday again. Like that. That's an easily spaced out schedule that doesn't overstress you, considering the travel is Carolina hour flight. At home, then into Montreal. That's what the schedule is right now, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They played, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday in Montreal.
Right.
And then Monday against Tampa at home. And they got some big games coming up. I mean, they do. And, we'll come back and we'll get into Mitch Marner's post-game comments and everyone reacting to what Mitch had to say and, what could be in store this upcoming week.
I got a hot take on that one.
Okay, you got a take on that? I got a couple of takes myself.
All right.
So we've all got some takes on this. We'll get to that coming up. Luke Wilson at 5 o'clock. Matt Duchene will join us in the 6 p.m. hour ahead of the Stars in town tomorrow night. And shout out Nick Taylor. Can't get out of the first segment without a shout out to my boy, my partner. I sat him straight at St. George's, and he's been great ever since.
Any DMs?
I left him alone. I will send him a DM maybe in the break just saying, Partsy, great job. Great job.
Dude, that guy gets it contention, man. He's prime Tiger Woods.
Yes, that's precisely what that was yesterday. After he missed, that was Rory at Pinehurst, the 2 putts he missed on 14 and 15. They were 4-footers, 3-footers. Yeah. And he missed them. I thought he's done. Like he's going to pack his bags and fly home. Guy eagles 18 and then gets up and down in miraculous fashion.
This putt here takes some stones because somebody right before him missed that.
Yes.
And he jammed it right in the center of the cup. And to get up and down twice like that, that's the beauty of kind of match play where if you're away like that, like there's some people I golf with who always say, like, get in first, you can win it.
Yeah.
And as soon as he put that chip tight, it went, Echeverria was like, man, I got to get this putt close now. And he jimmied it, and he 3-jacked it, and the guy won. It was an incredible theater, man.
It was pure match play, man. Echeverria, the underpants cam, when he chipped that to a kick-in, he absolutely was he was nervous, man.
Soiled himself.
He did.
He soiled himself, and he jimmied his first putt, and he choked away the last one.
That's exactly what it was.
And Nicky Taylor. But I was scared when Nicky was over it because I think it was Hicks that was like, this guy's missed a couple earlier. I'm like, why did you even bring that up? Like, just make it. It's almost like I wanted him to talk me into it being a routine tap-in, but he made it a routine tap-in.
Absolutely, he did. No, he's a machine. When he's in contention, he's a machine, Nick Taylor. All right, we'll get into Marner's comments from the other night. They mean anything? What does it mean for the future? What does it mean for the game tomorrow night? But Dallas in town. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Overdrive continues. Powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Luke Wilson in studio in half an hour. Brad Treliving speaking today to the media. We got a couple of clips we'll get to momentarily. But the Leafs lost 3-0 to Vancouver on Saturday. Wasn't a very lively game for the Leafs. If you had a ticket, I was talking to a buddy who was down there on Saturday. He's like, man, I was jacked for that game. It was brutal.
Dude, it's in the dictionary for dog day of season, like kind of sleepy stinker. Like that's what it was.
Yeah, it was not good. It was not a fun It was if you're a Vancouver fan. If you're a Canuck fan, it was great, obviously. But if you're a Leaf fan and you're in attendance, not necessarily. That's how the majority of people, I think, saw it. Yet here's what Mitch Marner had to say about the Leafs and their play on Saturday night when he spoke with the media after the game.
I liked it. I mean, I thought we played well. I really did. I think just last couple of games we've been giving up plays to teams that aren't missing on them. So, I thought we were a good 5-man tight in our zone. I thought we went to the neutral zone as a unit. I think when we didn't do that, that's when breakdowns happened, and they had a lot of offense off it. And that's something that we talked about that we need to be better at. And we'll look at it going forward and fix it.
All right.
Well, if you're going to play that one, you got to play Chris Tanev's.
All right, we've got Tanev's too.
Exactly.
Okay, here we'll compare and contrast.
Opposite.
Okay, compare and contrast. Here's Chris Tanev after the game.
Not good enough, so they outworked us, outcompeted us, and that's why they won.
So there's a
Same
bunch
game.
of different layers to this. Okay?
Teammates.
There's so many different layers to this where I think for Mitch, sometimes when you're a player as talented as him, you might get a bunch of touches and you might do some things as an individual. You get off the ice and you're like, man, I was probably pretty good tonight. And when you get asked the question, you somehow mentally can loop your own individual game into what you saw out there. And I give him credit almost where he was like, because sometimes you need to watch the tape again. Because sometimes your assessment is we weren't that bad, we couldn't get a save, and we couldn't score. But overall, it wasn't horrible. But there's the other angle where it's like that's what they got to get out of, where they get happy with themselves and they're easily satisfied, and they'll lose a playoff series. And John Tavares will talk about execution, and it's always but some will say that's what they need to get out of. So where do you want to go with it? I mean, it's whatever you want, but it's completely different than what his defenseman said.
Yeah, and I think my assessment was where Tanev is at. I do think it speaks to the game that Mitch plays. Mitch is not a lively player. He's not a physical player. He's not a guy that feeds off energy. So I think what you're saying there has some merit to it. Yeah. I think Mitch Marner's game is smarts and IQ.
He rarely has a bad one where you're like, God, did he stink tonight?
Exactly. And I think that's, although I would say in Carolina, it wasn't good. That doesn't help either. The fact that the game before he was a -6. And here's at the root of all this is Mitch, this fan base is very uncomfortable with kind of what's been happening this year, which is they're actually winning a lot, which they've done a lot in the regular season, but they're leading their division. They're on pace maybe to win the conference. They're competing for a President's Trophy, and it's been relatively smooth and quiet. Yes, you've had an injury to Matthews, and he hasn't had the same year that he usually has.
You think that scares fans?
I think it's uncomfortable for fans, and I think the one player, and this is more proof of it, that draws out a reaction, and generally it's a vitriolic reaction, it's an emotional reaction, it's a triggering comment from one guy, and it's always Mitch Marner. And what this is they've lost 2 games in a row, not played great. Mitch hasn't been great himself, and he says something, and this happens, I'd say, 2 or 3 times a year. I have said this for years. Mitch Marner is not comfortable with the media. It's not his thing. He doesn't – I honestly don't think he's thinking it through. I think it's a pretty accurate and honest assessment from his standpoint. I don't think he's lying. I don't believe this was some game plan. I'm going to say this to get the Wolves off us. I don't think that's what he was thinking. But it was such an easy layup for him to say what Tanev said. Right. And then it's just gone and no one pays attention to anything and the game's gone and you move on to Dallas. But he went the opposite way, which leads to the reaction that we have from the city, which draws out how polarizing that he is in this city. Like, Mitch Marner is separate from the other guys because he's a local guy, because of the way he plays, the way he speaks, and generally it is when they lose. Although I will say Austin's not much better. Matthews the other night in Carolina was -6, and he's like, it didn't really go our way. That was kind of his read, too. So I think it's not like Austin's Mr. Rah-Rah, that was brutal, that was awful, we owe it to our fans, people should get a refund, we stunk tonight. it's easy to play that, and Mitch never seems to pick up on that cue.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened again on Saturday night.
Those two guys that you just mentioned, they are not going to talk to the fan base or us or anybody.
Not in their DNA.
They not
don't
like a
do
guy
it.
with a mustache. A guy with a mustache says, you know what, we sucked and we got to be better. They're not going to talk to you like a guy with a mustache. So that's just the way it's
not
going to be.
how they think, not how they operate.
You know what, though? When I hear comments like that, I think of Connor Hellebuck. Remember Hellebuck's year-end presser where he gave up 6 or 7, and he goes, yeah, you guys aren't going to believe this, but I felt great against Colorado. And people are like, what? Hellebuck, I always joke because he can give up 7. He'll come right out and go, yeah, I felt great. Yeah, it just didn't go for me tonight. And I know certain guys are different in the media. And, Brian, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think with Mitch, I also think there is a defense mechanism in this market. He has been a little bit, I don't know what the word is, not standoffish. I think media to him is secondary. He doesn't really care to do the media, but he has to.
He has to do it,
he's
so
a
he
superstar,
speaks.
right?
Yeah.
So
never been comfortable with it.
No,
ever.
But that's when I look at it. I think if he feels, because Tanev just shoots from the hip. We were no good. We can be better. That's it. I think if Mitch says that, what it does is he's like because he's such a lightning rod, because he's a superstar, it almost puts a bullseye on you going, okay, we better watch Marner's play, where he's had a great season this year. So I think he just...
But Noodles, there's so many, and we always say we don't want guys to toss out cliches, but there was so many comments that would keep the flies off more than that one right there.
Yeah.
We're a tired hockey team. We look like it. We played like it. In the next 2 days, we need one thing to refresh our brains, and that's rest. And that's all we need.
Yeah, well,
that one keeps the flies off, doesn't it?
Again, Marner, I would say 2 or 3 times a year, and it's always when the fan base has their back up against the wall, and that's what Saturday night was, right? Because it's a Vancouver team coming off a back-to-back who hasn't been playing well, that flew in that day, and and it was an effort night, right? It wasn't an execution night; it was an effort night for the Leafs, and they didn't have it. And that comment comes out. It's generally after the playoffs. Hey, I don't have any regrets. Stuff like that. It's really, man. But he's been here 9 years. Again, Austin's no different. I got to continue to hammer that home. Austin Matthews is not a good quote. He's not good with the media. He's not comfortable with it. He's not a rah-rah guy. He's not a Rocky IV type, dialogue guy. That's not who he is. That's not what he is. And Mitch is no different. The thing is, Marner is in the firing line more for a number of different reasons. I think, again, because he's a local guy. I think because of the contract. That's also hanging over, right? A lot of Leaf fans have put that aside through 44 games because he's been great, and the Leafs have been great. But I think a lot of Leaf fans were waiting for something so they can come back out and say, see, I knew it. This is what it is, and this is why it's not going to change. And I would use Tanev as an example. Tanev is in the good graces of every Leaf fan right now. Now, he said, I think, his assessment was accurate, or the way I saw it, and he said the right thing, quote-unquote, from a PR standpoint, for people to give him a round of applause. I will say this, though. If Tanev said the exact same thing Marner said, no one would have paid attention to it. No one would have said a word about it. No one would say, oh, here we go, Chris Tanev accepting that kind of stuff. It's a Marner issue, and it's been very quiet this year through 44 games. But it is a ticking time bomb if he says the wrong thing, if he plays poorly.
Well, that's the other thing.
And it's coming in the playoffs, too.
I know. Well, get a hold of yourself, people. We're talking about a team that's in first place.
Exactly. They've
been
great.
2 stinker games, and all of a sudden he makes one comment that you don't take a liking to. And I said the other night on the panel, I think this guy is one of the tops in the league for Hart Trophy consideration.
He's in the top 10 this year, the way he's been playing. He's been great.
Yes. And now people are going to go nuts over this. Let's just give our head a shake.
Well, it's the history, though, right? The history is the history, still, man. And what you're seeing is a lot of people that don't trust the team, have been hearing people say they look different, they feel different, they sound different. People have been going in their caves saying, give me one opportunity to come out swinging. And he stepped in it on Saturday night because he gave them the opportunity to come out and say, see, I told you so.
Well,
don't trust it. Don't believe it. So that's what happened the other night.
I guess in a candid moment, though, if you put Marner and Tanev in the same room and go, guys, whose answer was right? What was it? Like, would they both have the same answer? Like, that's because Tanev was like not good enough, outworked, all of that type of stuff. And Marner's like, I thought we played very well. Like, can two of them, can both be right? I didn't see that the other night. I didn't see, like, the high danger chances were 11-5 for the Leafs. The Leafs had 11 chances on Lankinen, and Vancouver had 5 high danger chances. That was it. Like, the Leafs didn't give up much. It was kind of a dog game, but Vancouver scored on their opportunities and the Leafs didn't. And what would they, 0 for 3 on the power play?
The power play is a disaster.
The power play is going. Did you ever think with that amount of skill that we'd be even at this point with that power play? And I've been telling you guys for 2 years now, like, you got to create some kind of disturbance before you get to skill stuff. Like, there has to be shot and then rebound and get to it, and then you can. But for those guys, they need to literally go out and hammer some beers one night with a napkin and a Sharpie and figure it out, because come playoff time, they're going to need that power play to be dialed in.
I think they're trying. I don't know if you guys saw this the other night. Matthews tried to slide into that Draisaitl backhand. Did you see that? In the bumper position?
Well, he was in the bumper the other night.
He put his back towards, I think it was Tavares, and you know how Draisaitl will put his back to McDavid, and you pass it to his backhand, and he turns and fires from the bumper position. Matthews tried it. I think they're trying lots of things and looking at other power plays throughout the league, going, what's working, what's not working.
Noodles, I just, like, it's crazy how you can pay these guys $10 to $12, $13 million a year. Like, yeah. I always go back to that Tampa power play. Like, how many times would you see Kucherov, as soon as he got the puck, he would just kind of sweep one like a missile an inch off the ice just at the goalie's feet. Yeah. And then after that, it was just chaos because Nick Paul was in front, and they would scramble and get the rebound, and then it would go back to Kucherov, and then he'd have penalty killers moving, and that's when he would make a kill shot to Braden Point or the bumper, or Stamkos through the seam. But it would always start off with just some kind of missile at the feet, and it would be scrambling all over and bouncing all over. And then they went for the kill shot after that. They didn't start with the kill shot. So if they wanted a theme moving forward, it would be, don't start with the kill play right off the bat, because that's just not the way it works.
Well, the other thing, too, is we don't know the nature of Matthews' injury, but when he scored 70, we'll call it 69, he was a dangerous one-timer. He was dangerous every time. Like, he's
Which
not
player?
as dangerous. Austin Matthews. Yeah. Like
Well, how many times have you seen William Nylander, who's got an unbelievable one-timer, be set up for a one-timer? How many?
Well,
not many.
Not as much. He has had the one-timer through the seam, but you're right, not as much. Where my point being is, if Matthews was at 100%, I think he's shooting a lot more, and they're getting the puck to him at that time. I think they work away from him right now, which is more speaks to maybe the nature of his injury, or him not, being comfortable enough to get it away the way.
I think there's too much movement, there's too much thinking going on, and there's too many fantasy plays being drawn up. It's like, Ovi stands, he does not move. Alex Ovechkin does not move, and he's going to be the greatest goal scorer of all time. And he scares the hell out of everyone just standing there. Opens up everything standing in one spot. Like, just put guys in dangerous positions, and there's too much movement and too much, I don't know. Well, it's crazy that we're even having the conversation.
Yeah, they're 19th in the league in power play percentage. And they were on the ice early today practicing it. They're trying to figure it out. Mark Savard, welcome to the market. Like, everyone has their eyes set on Mark Savard. Right, who was hired to effectively run the power play, and he's trying to figure it out. But they're not going to get away from taking all these guys off the power play again. Like that, they just won't do that. They won't move 2 or 3 of them, off to the second power play.
With all due respect to Mark Savard, with players this good, like they should You should literally, in the first practice with Savvy, you should be skating around saying, Sav, like, we pretty much know what we're doing here, pal.
Yeah.
You just kind of give us some guidelines, like, we got this. But now it's morphed into it's got a life of its own. And sooner or later, what's going to happen is someone's going to get their feelings really hurt, and they're going to be taken off it because they just can't watch it anymore. Well, I'm shocked it hasn't got to that point right now.
I've heard – now, Edmonton historically has had the best power play in the last 3 years, I think in the history since they started tracking it. And Glenn Gulletson runs that. And I've talked to Glenn, at length. I used to work with him in Calgary. And there's a lot of creativity on it, but obviously having McDavid and Draisaitl, doesn't
Noodles.
hurt. But
Draisaitl, the same thing. He almost stands in the corner, and he's a danger there because he can roof it under the crossbar from the corner. Bouchard stands at the top. Hyman's in front of the net, and 97 skates around 100 miles an hour, and you can't stop him. That's their power play.
But my point being is, Draisaitl's got to be able to execute from that one-timer.
And he
scored
does.
a lot of goals last year from that down-low position. He's not able to do that right now, going back to the nature potentially of his injury, because he's not shooting as much as we've seen as far as the dangerous shots.
Well, yeah, I mean,
you can tell.
Yeah, he's laboring, and Four Nations is, rapidly approaching, and Brad Treliving spoke on that today, Austin, and where he's going with that, the pursuit of another centerman. Come back and get into the Treliving comments. Luke Wilson in studio in 15. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Luke Wilson in 10 minutes. We'll get to our Something to Chew On, brought to you by Boston Pizza, asking who had the worst weekend. There's a lot of potential options in the NFL. We got a game tonight, Rams-Vikings, out in, is it in L.A. or I guess it's in Phoenix? Yeah, it's in Arizona. They moved that game to Arizona. So we'll get to that with Luke. Brad Treliving speaking today. We'll get to that audio this afternoon on their pursuit of a center, Austin Matthews and the Four Nations face-off. See, the Jays made a signing on Friday night. And
but the guy's arm's going to fall off. He's going to fail a physical. It's insane.
It's a bit concerning. So Jeff Hoffman, who was a draft pick of the Jays, they traded him in the Tulowitzki deal. Last couple of years, he's been an elite bullpen arm in Philly, really good. Friday night news breaks. 3-year deal, $33 million, bunch of options, can get him up to like $39 million total. And then
it comes out, $40 million deal in Atlanta with the Braves, failed physical, $38 million deal somewhere else.
In Baltimore, failed
physical.
Yeah, so it turns out he had an agreement with the Orioles, and they looked at his shoulder and said, actually, that's a no for us, no dice.
Yeah.
And now Mark Bowman, who covers the Braves, is reporting per a source that Hoffman had basically a deal nixed with the Braves after their medical staff looked at him and said, this isn't going to work for us.
Yeah, and I'm sure they didn't see a pimple on his shoulder.
No. This is it's just an example of when that snowball gets going and it's going downhill, man. You can't stop it. And the Jays, they need help in the bullpen. That has been very overlooked. There's so much focus on how much people are pissed off with Shapiro and Atkins, the fascination with Vladdy and his future, which I understand. Got to get some pop in the lineup. Understand that bullpen was horrendous last year. Absolute disaster.
Who knows how it plays out, Hayes? I saw Gary Roberts. Anybody that would tell him any medical failures not playing hockey again. This guy showed up down in Carolina, and some doctor said, "You're playing hockey." And the guy played hockey for 10 more years.
Well, listen, I mean, the Jays, they've got their doctors too, and I'm presuming they went through everything and they saw whatever they saw and said it's all good.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's an example of how nothing is going right, and this should be a positive. Yes, it's not a Juan Soto signing or Corbin Burns.
I don't think everybody's like, why the hell would the Atlanta Braves and the Baltimore Orioles say no thanks? We cannot sign you, and all of a sudden the Jays doctor is
I don't know, man.
It's just honestly, like a first round. It's like Samsonov. He just shows up and he wheels into Toronto. And everyone's like, "We got our number one goalie." And I always said, "Do you think the Capitals are a bunch of dummies down there that they just said this guy's awesome? We're going to let him walk?" Wrong.
That is the concern, that they've signed Yanni Hoffman-Paw here, and the guy is just never going to play. And
Yanni Hoffman-Paw.
That is a bit of a concern. If that, I want that to stick. Yanni Hoffman-Paw, until this guy throws smoke in the spring and makes it through a season. But it does seem far-fetched that he'll get through 3 years without some sort of an issue. But he's going to close for them. Like, that's the plan, right? Because Romano went the other way. Jordan Romano went to Philly, and now Hoffman's up here in Toronto. And I think the plan is that Hoffman's going to close games, something that he hasn't really done much in Philly, but they just need something to go their way.
Yeah,
right?
well, wouldn't it have
The
been
Jays
easier
need
to-
some
they coulda got-
positivity here.
They could have got Romano at a discounted number. Don't you think
I think so.
the devil you know would have been easier than the devil you don't?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
Probably.
what it comes down to. Like they didn't qualify him, and then I think Atkins went on the record immediately saying they still had interest in keeping him, and then maybe Romano said, "You know what, guys, I've had enough. I'm out." I don't know. Maybe Philly. Listen, Philly's a really good team. They're a playoff team every year. Maybe there was something enticing of the idea of going down there and pitching in October. And
Dude, speaking of Philly, have you seen Bryce Harper lately? Like, this guy's making banana bread on Twitter and posting vids of his banana breads and his coffees and stuff. And I keep watching these videos, and I'm like, why does Bryce Harper, who's an all-time great, want to post himself making banana bread?
He's domesticated. He's enjoying himself.
Is
Have
it
you
like
seen any of this stuff?
I've seen like some snapshots of him, but I didn't know what he was doing. Like,
Dude, this guy he made a full video like of a loaf of banana bread and how he dials it up and
Okay.
all these ingredients he's using, and I'm like, why are you doing this? I don't get it.
maybe he's an
I like
influencer now.
Dude, I
love
guess it's
it.
like
Maybe he
Bryson's
is.
got all the money in the world and he wants to hit golf balls over his garage.
Yeah,
Like,
give guys $100,000 if they hit a hole in one. That happened last week. Guy
I
gave
don't
him-
know.
Said, hey, I'll give you $100,000 if you hit a hole in one in the next hour, and he hit it hole in one in like his
Dude,
fifth
this Bryce
shot.
Harper was like, let's look at this guy.
Yeah.
This is the coffee I make. And he's like, I use oat milk. And I'm like, I don't
Okay.
care what you use in your coffee, man.
Good for him, man. Good
Kind
for
of
him.
enjoy it. I don't mind that.
Yeah, why not? Bacon with
I make a
Bryce.
mean overnight
Bacon with
oats.
Bryce.
Overnight oats. That's my specialty. I make that.
Okay,
Mean,
well,
I can
post
make
it
banana
online.
bread.
You don't have you should have the stones to step up and post that online tonight.
No, I don't do
Shoot a
that.
video and post it.
Hazy,
I
I'll
want
tell you
that
what.
online.
You owe us. I'm going to have a cheat
I
day.
know.
And you owe us a
Lasagna's
lasagna.
coming up. It's coming up, and I'll video the whole thing.
We need it.
Hour
Yeah, we
two up
need it.
next. Luke Wilson and what Brad Trilliving had to say earlier today in hour two. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.